One item, right?
Yes.
No other.
There's reports afterwards, but you feel free to leave.
Man, I have a grandson.
Yeah. Yeah. So then this slide will be up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can begin your case, and you can click through as you talk.
Okay.
Okay. You can bring your script up here and have it ready.
No, sides. So, regard nominee who would like
You know you're officially off, right?
request to suspend the findings of fact and continue with the main presentation. Slide to see which on top is here.
I told him, got an emotion from the mayor of South Roswell. Now it's just a constant.
Are you still on here or no?
No, sir, no.
Okay. Oh, hey, yeah, well, good luck to you. Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sure do. I'll take care. Thank you.
James is actually an engineer. He did run for council on the board too. Sir. I'm outstanding. Without the samples, we don't want to. Without the samples. It's budget time and political season, and they're already running for your offices already. So it's crazy over there.
I can hear you.
It's crazy.
How are you, sir? It's good to see you. I'm all right.
I've been trying to think through, and I don't know, what do you want a developer, you want a realtor, you want...
Would be nice.
Technically, this is your commission. Technically, this is your commission.
Biggest concern is that anybody who's involved in the building industry is reluctant to look at things our way, especially in terms of having improvements necessary. We get the same argument that we always get. Oh, we've never made the deals. We've never had to do with that.
See, here we actually have well, the first from the city council, James Hildegat, he's an engineer.
At least they understand something.
So far, everybody agrees. But I mean,
I don't know.
typically we make a recommendation. We should come up with a recommendation quick, that way we can look at it. Deadline is the next week.
Yes. All right, well, start going through my stuff and I'll talk to Meredith and see what she thinks. And circle back around and try to get something else. So I can get a recommendation. You think about it too.
Well, I've been thinking about it. The other thing is, check with Joe. The mayor doesn't already have one. He's already got an idea.
Who's that? Well, everybody that I talked to, I'm told I had the pleasure of meeting Tom Jennings yesterday, just laughed at. Just like that. That's all you have to do is say Tom Jennings, and everybody just starts laughing.
Tom Jenny, already had talked. There's some things up here. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they are.
There you go. Thank you, Jeff.
That's the extent of my gavel. No gavel up here. So anyway, we're going to call to order the City of Roswell Planning and Zoning Commission. Pardon me? It's on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, it doesn't sound that loud.
Okay, where we were. We're back to the City of Roswell Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 27th at 6 o'clock p.m. May I have a roll call vote, please? Not a vote, but a roll call attendance, I guess you could call it.
Chair Story,
Here.
Commissioner McCornack,
Present.
Commissioner Henderson,
Here.
Commissioner Lassard,
Here.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Here.
Commissioner McDaniel is absent.
Thank you. And one point of order before then, I guess we've all seen here that Daniel Lopez has resigned from our commission and has joined the city council. So he won't be here this evening. Councilor Henderson, we'll call you Councilor. Could you do the swearing in, please?
Sure.
Would all those that are going to speak this evening or give testimony, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we have the approval of tonight's agenda. If I could have a motion, please, if anybody, unless there's any changes of anything. Staff have any changes, or commissioners see anything you want to change?
I can make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Saul and a second by Janice. You got there first, Steve. To approve the agenda for the Tuesday, July 27th meeting as presented. All signify approval by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passed. Next, we have the approval of the minutes from the June 22nd, 2021 regular meeting. Commissioner Lassard is not eligible to vote to approve these minutes. I believe she was the only one that was absent that night, so she's not able to verify anything. If anybody's got any comments or questions on the minutes as presented, if not, I would accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the minutes of the June 22nd meeting for the P&Z.
Second.
So we have a motion by Steve and a second by James to approve the minutes from the June 22nd, 2021 minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now we will move on to the public hearing item, case number 21-013, a special use permit. Meredith, you want us to waive the reading of everything now? Could somebody please have a motion to waive the reading of the finding of facts?
Chairman Story, I make a motion to waive the reading of the finding of facts and land use and zoning consideration.
Second.
Got a motion by Jenna and a second by Steve to waive the reading of the land use and zoning organization, what is it called? Considerations. And the other. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So now we will hear, and I believe we're going to hear from staff first. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
All right. Good evening, Chair Story and Commissioners. There is only one zoning case on the agenda for this meeting, number 21-013, a request for a special use permit for a new sanctuary for an existing worship facility in the RMS Residential Mobile Home Subdivision at 2200 North Garden Avenue. This slide has two images. The image on top is an aerial picture of the property, which has been highlighted. The image on the bottom shows which zoning district the property is in. The lot is within the RMS, or Residential Manufactured Home Subdivision District, and is surrounded by RMS zoning on all four sides. The Rosewood Mobile Home Park lies to the west of the property past the fence, and the lot is adjacent to North Garden Avenue, a major collector. To the south, there is a storage facility at the corner of 19th and Garden. The lot size is 135 feet by 240 feet and has an existing parking lot with 2 drive entrances. This slide shows an image of the site plan with the 135-foot by 240-foot lot. The applicant is proposing to build a 50-foot by 60-foot structure as well as an additional parking lot. The ordinance requires 1 space for every 3 seats, and the 41 parking spaces that are proposed meet this requirement. There is also a 55-foot front yard setback, a 20-foot rear yard setback, and solid fencing proposed for the lot. The property currently has a solid fence to the west, partial fencing for the north, and will need to complete the fencing requirements during the construction phase. There has been 0 objections received for this project. The staff will review the site plan, engineering plans, building plans before issuing the building permit. The staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions, Austin?
No.
Thanks. Oh, thanks. Little button down here. So now we will hear 21-013. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this request? Please state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Tim Hiller. My address is 601 Cannoncedo Drive, Roswell, 88201.
If you want to just kind of give us a little idea of what you want to do, whatever you want to let us know about, you're welcome to.
Yes, sir. Our initial plan was to have the building built. We're kind of growing right now and project that in the future we'll need it. As a consequence of putting the building there and increased occupancy, we also have to build the parking lot to the area. So basically, that's what we're proposing to do, and to sort of negotiate all the requirements that come with that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this case? Ma'am, you're the only one left in the audience if you'd like to speak. Okay. Do we have anybody online? Nobody online? Okay. There being no others to speak in favor, is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak against case number 21-013? Anybody against 21-013? There being none, we'll open it up to staff. Do you have any other comments, or did Austin cover everything for you? Commissioners, got any questions of staff or the applicant or anybody?
It's good to see people growing.
I agree. Being none, I would accept a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve case 21-03.
Second.
We have a motion by Steve to approve case number 21-013, the special use permit, and a second by James. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Y'all are good to go. Trying, Lewis. We have, our next item up is other business.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have a few comments by staff to see where we are on some of the cases that we postponed.
Commissioners, with respect to, I'm assuming the subdivision you're speaking about is the large 899 unit subdivision at Country Club and Sycamore. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's about 3 or maybe 4.
And the other one was the Allsups there on the
The
northeast
Allsup.
corner, Second Sycamore. That guy was here last month, remember?
He was here last month. We have met with him and talked to him over the phone. Right now, their engineer is working with Lewis, our engineer. They've got trying to deal with some of the grading issues, some of the drainage issues, and some of the other things that are going on. They haven't communicated with planning and zoning in probably pretty close to a month because we've left it in the hands of the engineers at this point for them to work out some of the issues. I do owe them a follow-up phone call. I believe next week. They're in my tickler file to find out, get some exact information on the status, but hopefully we'll have more to report to you next month.
I think there was a comment that was made that based on the traffic study, there was some concerns about Sycamore and West Second, and that I guess staff did not agree with the New Mexico Highway Department. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I think what it was is that the applicant didn't agree with all that the DOT wanted
Okay.
them to do.
That particular project, again, it's in the hands of the engineers. The primary issue, I believe, on that one had to do with the traffic study and the amount of traffic coming through that particular intersection. It is the level of service of that intersection is already substandard because it is an offset intersection. It already has a tremendous amount of traffic. And with the proposed upgrades that Allsups was proposing on that particular intersection, they're going to go from a two-pump bay, so only with 2 pumps, and then add in, but they're going to have then 10 gasoline pumps, 3 diesel pumps, and 3 charging stations. So they're going to be more than 500% increase in the vehicle trips per day coming through, just through that, plus a 6,000 square foot mini market, and then another half an acre set aside for future development. So it's a pretty significant change in use.
When you have a charging station, whether it's like at an Allsups or you see them in Albuquerque, do they charge for that? Do you got to pull up, put money in?
I honestly
or-
could not tell you how that's. I know that our friends at Tesla have started charging for their supercharger stations nationwide.
Meredith seems to know the answer. What do you got, Meredith?
Chair Story, from what little I know of charging stations, there's a kind of a card or an app, something like that, that it charges to the app or the card.
I kind of assumed it wouldn't be free.
I think for a while with Tesla was free. Maybe that was a bad business model. I don't know.
But I saw something today that had a good point, is what if you're, halfway to Albuquerque and you run out of electricity, where do you go to the station to get gas or electric or whatever, so I'm not buying
That
one.
is to use a phrase that is very popular with the federal government these days, the infrastructure to support our electrical vehicle rollouts are not quite there yet.
Well, and if you can only go 200 miles, but I'm going to Fort Collins, so I've got to go to Raton and spend the night while I charge, I'm like, come on, give me a break here. Not doing it.
That's why I do think for the foreseeable future, you're going to see most people are going to, at least in this area, are going to shy away from full electric vehicles. You'll see a lot more hybrids, though. Cars that'll be around town, you'll be able to drive them every day, back and forth to work, and other things, you'll never use a drop of gas. You just take them home, the plug-in hybrids, and you'll be able to charge them up right there at your home overnight. But the long-distance travel is still an issue that has to be overcome.
Steve, did you have any other ones you were?
Well, I just a matter of information. How's the brewery on East Second coming along?
The new pub and brewery there on East
The,
Second and railroad tracks?
Oh, that one. It is on hold for the time being. I drive by there quite a bit, and I have seen zero activity at that building in quite some time.
Did you guys ever get back with those guys to iron
We
out?
have reached out to them multiple times and have had no response.
Huh.
In fact, I personally reached out to them since the previous meetings, 3 different occasions, and I've had no response.
Interesting. What else, Steve? Anything
Well,
else?
wasn't there,
Hate it when these guys like keep in notebooks all their old stuff.
I guess that's it. I can't spot, seemed like there was another one, but Meredith?
Chair Story, Commissioner Henderson, there was one more on Main and Ballard, and it's on hold because they'll need to come forward with a variance as well
Okay.
to make
that was-
everything fit on that
That
lot.
was a drive-in restaurant or something.
Yes. Small drive, just a very small drive-through.
I think that was it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other business? Do you guys have anything?
Well, we can continue to move on. Are we ready for the next thing? We do have a number of updates we want to bring to you. We started doing some of this last month and the month before, but we want to keep you all updated on everything that's going on. We need to pull up a different slide here. We're going to go with item number 1, and this has been the item that has kept our staff, at least half of our staff, busy nearly full-time for the last 60 days, and that is having to deal with the upcoming Cannabis Ordinance. Do we have the Cannabis Ordinance slideshow? Now, one of the things we're trying to do, of course, is get out in front of the state of New Mexico, and one of the things we're doing tonight for y'all is letting you hear from more than 1 or 2 voices. Minor note for next time, introduce yourself, sir. That is Austin Ford. He's been our summer intern, and Austin will be leaving us about 7 days from now, I believe so, heading back to New York and going back to school, finishing off his master's degree. But he's been a tremendous help this summer, and we wanted to give him a chance to get in front of you all. So that's why he was bringing you the presentation this evening.
Good luck to you.
Okay. Okay. Our cannabis ordinance, though, is moving forward very quickly. If you've been keeping track of things, you know that we went to the legal committee last week on Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then at 5 o'clock in the evening presented the legal committee's findings to the city council, at which point they reviewed it and set it for the public agenda. So the first phase of the cannabis ordinance will go before the city council for a full hearing on August 12th. But the thing to remember with the cannabis ordinance is we are developing a comprehensive ordinance. It is going to cover many areas, not just land use, not just development, but also we have to establish a new zoning district. We have to establish fee structures. We have to establish applications and regulatory permits. There is a lot to be done. And we've managed to cover a lot, and we've done a lot in the last 60 days. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have a new associate planner over there on the end of the dais. And so I'm going to give him the opportunity to bring you all up to speed on where we are with the cannabis ordinance and to ask any questions. So this is a test. Make the hard questions hard, okay? I will be grading his performance. Okay? So, Spencer.
Well, I have one question for him, and might solve a few things. That this is an ordinance, right? So it doesn't go through us.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Actually, it's an ordinance, and the ordinance will create a brand new chapter in the municipal code. So no, it went to it went
Right.
through the cannabis task force, then to legal committee. Now it's at city council.
Right.
And
So this is just basically for our information. This is
But
not
we need
anything-
to bring you all up to speed because there are going to be some changes that are coming down in the cannabis ordinance with respect to conditional use permits, zone changes, and other things that will end up in front of you. So we
Okay.
want to make sure you all know what you're going to be seeing coming up in the future.
Okay.
Okay, great. Good evening, Chair Story and Commissioners. Tonight, we will be providing an update of the city's comprehensive cannabis ordinance, proposed ordinance 21-09, Chapter 27 of the Roswell City Code. So here's our outline for tonight's presentation on proposed ordinance 21-09. So we will begin the presentation by giving some background information on the state of New Mexico's Cannabis Regulation Act and some of those implications for the city of Roswell. Then we will discuss three important aspects of ordinance 21-09 that we currently have guidance and regulation on from the state level, and what we consider to be the most pressing and timely considerations of the ordinance. And those considerations include personal possession and use, zoning and development requirements, and non-conforming uses and establishments. So it's important to note here right off the bat that much more content will be added to this ordinance as we receive more information from the state. And those considerations are, of course, going to be included into the ordinance when more information becomes available. So just understand this is very much a working document. But to begin, let's briefly discuss why there's a need for proposed ordinance 21-09. So the New Mexico legislature, upon approving the Cannabis Regulation Act, established a comprehensive regulatory framework for the possession, cultivation, manufacture, and sales of cannabis and cannabis-derived products, effective June 29, 2021. So the Cannabis Regulation Act provides that local jurisdictions may adopt time, place, and manner rules that do not conflict with the Cannabis Regulation Act or the D. Johnson Clean Indoor Air Act, including rules that reasonably limit density of licenses and operating times consistent with neighborhood uses. And that is why it's important for all of you today. So as you can see here on this timeline that we have here, we don't have a lot of time when it comes to our implementation schedule. And that is why there's a bit of a sense of urgency to get a regulatory framework in place. So no later than September 1st, 2021, the Cannabis Control Division, or CCD, will begin accepting and processing license applications for cannabis producers, cannabis producer microbusinesses, and properly licensed medical cannabis producers. And then no later than January 1st, 2022, the CCD will begin issuing licenses to conduct commercial cannabis activity for people properly licensed in the medical cannabis program. And then additionally, the CCD will begin licensing cannabis training and education programs, issuing cannabis server permits, and begin all types of cannabis license processing. Then, no later than April 1st, 2022, retail sales of commercial cannabis begins. So, with that, the City of Roswell will be responsible for enacting controls and restrictions related to the possession, use, cultivation, manufacture, and sales of cannabis and cannabis-derived products in order to provide proper and adequate protection of the health, safety, and welfare of residents and visitors within the City of Roswell. So the intent of this ordinance is to establish a general framework for the regulation of cannabis and cannabis-derived products, and anticipates adopting additional provisions in the future to provide a comprehensive approach to cannabis and related activities within the city. So currently, like we briefly alluded to earlier, we are still awaiting guidance and a bit more regulatory information on a number of issues from the state. And because of that, like I said earlier, there will be additions and amendments as we continue to move forward with this, and that will likely be over the course of years. However, given our circumstances with a lack of information currently at the state level, previous efforts of the ordinance have focused on what we believe is or are the most timely and pressing considerations. Those are personal possession and use, zoning and development requirements, and non-conforming uses. So let's talk a bit more about what Ordinance 21-09 entails, beginning with personal possession and use. So pursuant to the requirements of the Cannabis Regulation Act, adults 21 years of age and older may possess a maximum of 2 ounces of cannabis, a maximum of 16 grams of concentrated cannabis-infused products, and a maximum of 800 milligrams of edible cannabis in public places within the City of Roswell. And then in addition to basic possession and use, individuals will also be permitted by right to grow a maximum of 12 cannabis plants per household in the interior of an enclosed structure, facility, building, or greenhouse. So moving forward, This will require the need to develop a framework regarding controls and restrictions related to public possession of cannabis and cannabis-derived products, as well as home cultivation. So next, let's discuss zoning and development requirements. So once again, with the goal of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the City of Roswell's residents and visitors, all cannabis cultivation, processing, manufacturing, distribution, retail sales, on-site consumption, and cannabis-related special events will be prohibited in various established special districts and locations throughout the city. Prohibited districts will include the Downtown Historic District, the Downtown Business District, the C3 zone, the Railroad District Metropolitan Redevelopment Area, and the Roswell International Air Center's areas that are prohibited by FAA and TSA guidelines. And it's important to note here that district and air center boundaries are subject to change over time. But in addition to these aforementioned districts, cannabis-related businesses and activities shall also be prohibited within 300 feet of any residential districts, within 300 feet of all schools, parks, churches, recreation facilities, child care facilities, military facilities, senior care facilities, retirement facilities, medical facilities, mental health centers, addiction centers, or rehabilitation centers. Sure.
So why the downtown business district C3, is that basically Main Street along there? Who's saying they can't have them there? I mean, to me, that would, you might get a little bit more downtown business if you had some of those downtown.
I think a lot of our reasoning was because we don't have a lot of guidance at this point, like stated earlier. We were looking at that example, the city of Albuquerque, and what they were doing to protect their historic district.
I don't mean the historic district, I mean downtown. I don't mean the historic district, I'm talking about downtown Main Street, Business District C3. To me, that would mean you could have some shops along Main Street. It just seemed to me like that would be easier for people to find that are coming into town or whatever, and might develop a little bit more downtown traffic.
At this point, Chairman Story, the issue with the downtown business district and the issues relative to the Main Street Roswell group that is prominent in that area, the issue of cannabis is very divisive among that group. In fact, they just did sent out a what did they do? A survey. Thank you. A survey, and it was virtually split right down the middle, with 50% of the people in favor, 50% of the business owners in favor, 50% of the business owners not in favor. One of the big problems that we've seen, not just here in Roswell, but in other areas, is with respect to areas that are undergoing revitalization attempts, is that you do tend to discourage some types of businesses once you allow cannabis into a revitalization area. So in order to protect the existing businesses that are there and to promote other good popular destination type of businesses, we feel it's appropriate, at least at this time, to set aside the downtown business district. You have a number of, most of those businesses downtown, including many of the alien-themed businesses, are geared towards children. And so many of the restrictions that you see are also geared towards protecting our most vulnerable populations, beginning with the children. So we feel it's appropriate to move these businesses off of Main Street and out of some of the historic districts, the revitalization areas. And then, of course, with respect to the Roswell Air Center, TSA and the FAA currently still have a no tolerance policy for anything having to do with cannabis. So we are striving to do that. We have opened it up again to the primarily, and you'll see later on, in the C2 zone and the I2 zone, which means there's still going to be plenty of other places where these businesses can be located within the city.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question along the same lines, and just clarification. These prohibited districts, you mentioned the historical district. Are we talking about growing for personal use, or is this just strictly for retail? Is that what we're talking about, for retail stores? Or can somebody who owns a house in a historic district not grow 12 plants?
Personal use is allowed anywhere. If you've got a home and you want to grow for your own personal use, you can have it. The reason we are specifically exempting the historic district from commercial use, and this is something that if you go back and you read the state ordinance, there's no such thing, at least from a regulatory perspective. You will get a license to either be a medical provider or a recreational provider, but from a legislative perspective, it's all commercial cannabis. So where you won't have any dispensaries, you won't have any recreational cannabis sales or use or consumption within the historic district. We believe that it's appropriate that that area is set aside to in posterity for the residents of the city that have come here and want to be able to see and visit our downtown historic district the way it exists now.
Thank you.
We're back.
Question. I sat in on a webinar sponsored by the Municipal League explaining the law, and one of the things that was pointed out was that they did not exempt churches in the state statute. So I noticed that we've included churches. So are we going to be in conflict with the state by doing that?
One of the things that we've done, and we've been in contact with our council from the very beginning, and we looked into it, and then we looked at what happened in California and Colorado and a number of other places. And when you begin to exempt schools in particular, what you're doing there is you're protecting your vulnerable population. You're protecting the children. Well, last time I checked, children still gather at churches. They gather at parks. They gather at playgrounds. They gather at other places other than just schools. So we are just extrapolating on the idea that we need to protect our most vulnerable populations. Okay? And we are working very closely with La Casa Community Health as well to make sure that we have the science that backs up our desire to expand those prohibited areas to include any place where children or the vulnerable will gather.
Okay, I just wondered what leniency we have in naming exemptions when it's not in the state statute.
We will not know that answer. I was on the same webinar that you were, the NMML, and if you remember, probably at the end during the Q&A, the Linda Trujillo, the director of the Cannabis Control Division, many of her answers were, I don't know, we're working on that, we have to confer on that, we're still working on those regulations. Everything is very much in flux, okay? And it will probably remain in flux for many, many years. In fact, I am still in contact with many of my friends in California, and 5 years after California passed their recreational ordinance, they are still issuing provisional permits. They still don't have everything together at the state level. But we have to assume that it's going to be up to us to take care of our vulnerable populations, that it's up to us to set the standard. And to be quite honest, there are a number of cities in and around New Mexico that are looking for us for leadership on this issue. So we're going to have a lot of cities that are looking to us and going, we like what they're doing, and we're going to go that route as well.
Well, I certainly, I applaud your aggressiveness, or at least let's do it the way we want it, and then if somebody challenges us, we'll fight the battle then. So that's fine.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, Spencer.
All right. So yeah, Kevin was just kind of talking about it, but cannabis-related businesses will be limited to C2 and I2 zones in the city. So cannabis sales and establishments, both recreational and medical, must be located in the city's commercial cannabis floating zone, and that is located within the community commercial C2 zone in the city, while cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, processing, distribution, and special events must be located in the industrial cannabis zone within the city's heavy industrial I2 zone. So lastly, let's discuss our third and final significant consideration for what we're providing you tonight, and that is non-conforming uses. So any previously permitted cannabis establishment and or cannabis-related use, including medical dispensaries and retail cannabis establishments, may continue to operate as that same use as it did prior to becoming non-conforming, subject to the rules, regulations, and restrictions imposed by the city's cannabis ordinance.
Well, we don't have any retail, back up. Back up a slide, will you? We don't have any retail cannabis establishments, right? They're all
Medical stuff.
medical right now.
Again, there's, based on the current zoning, the current legislation coming out of the state, the difference between a medical retail facility, a dispensary, and a just standard commercial retail facility, recreational use retail facility, there is none legislatively. It comes down to your permit. So we have to lump everything together right now. The existing dispensaries that we have, the half dozen of them, I guess, they will be allowed to continue to operate under very strict circumstances as non-conforming uses. But if
Where
they
they
want
are, they won't have to move or relocate.
not immediately, not immediately. If they will have to relocate, and we'll point out that section of the ordinance for you if you'd like to take a look at it.
No, that's okay, I'm just curious.
All right.
Along the same lines, just a quick question, you may or may not know, do you know they're gonna get rid of that medical card if you're not gonna need one anymore, or
No, they're gonna keep it,
are they? I
yeah.
wonder what the use of that is.
What do you mean?
'Cause if anybody can buy it now, then why would you need a medical card for it?
Right now, with the facilities we have here in town, we only have medical facilities operating here in town. So you must have your medical marijuana card. Those will continue to exist for a very good reason, and this is where we're looking for the state for some guidance. If you look at the way the taxation scheme works on that, retail commercial cannabis is going to be subject to up to a 20% excise tax. Medical cannabis is not subject to that excise tax. Additionally, unless the rules are changed, if you have a medical marijuana card, you can buy medical marijuana at age 18, beginning at age 18. You cannot buy recreational marijuana until you're 21. There's some differences there, which is why, from a regulatory permitting standpoint, the uses, they're going to have to declare their specified use at some point, whether or not they're going to be a recreational dispensary or they're going to be a medical dispensary.
They
But
can do
those-
both, can't they?
Excuse me?
They can be both, can't they?
They can, but that requires two separate permits, and that is going to be a challenge to manage the, let's just say, security of such a facility,
And
who you let
separation.
in and who you do not let in.
Separation of the two.
Maybe different doors, different stores, it may be, but that's, at least at this point, there is that opportunity. We'll know how the state's going to deal with it sometime after September 1.
Okay, continue. So any non-conforming cannabis establishments or uses shall be subject to repairs and alterations, additions and enlargements, restoration as a result of damages, discontinuance of the non-conforming use, and vacant non-conforming use. So as we move forward, this is going to entail further discussion on the development of a regulatory framework for existing non-conforming uses. So let's take a look at our next upcoming steps, moving forward with proposed ordinance 21-09. Oh, is this the wrong one? Okay, well, I'll just talk
There's
about
supposed to be another slide in
it. I know.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, so following the legal committee and special city council meetings on Thursday, July 22nd for the advertising of a public hearing, we now have the following schedule moving forward. So draft ordinance 21-09 will be adopted by city council on August 12th. Amendments to draft ordinance 21-09, which began July 26, will be presented to legal committee on August 26. Then approval to set for a public hearing of the approved ordinance amendment will be heard by City Council on September 9th. And then lastly, on October 14th, there will be a City Council public hearing and an adoption of draft ordinance 21-09. So this cycle will be repeated until we have a complete comprehensive cannabis chapter in the city's ordinance or the city's code. So as stated earlier in the timeline slide, there's not a lot of time for implementation of all aspects related to cannabis. So we are already working quickly toward the development of implementation applications, permits, policies, procedures, and everything. So we can be ready and ahead of the game as soon as possible for when the state is. So to conclude everything, the New Mexico legislature established a comprehensive regulatory framework for the possession, cultivation, manufacture, and sales of cannabis and cannabis-derived products, where local jurisdictions may adopt time, place, and manner rules that do not conflict with the Cannabis Regulation Act or the D. Johnson Clean Indoor Air Act. And so, like stated earlier, we're still waiting on some information from the state for a complete ordinance. However, concentrated efforts have focused on the immediate considerations that we feel are the most immediate and pressing, and those are personal possession and use, zoning and development requirements, and non-conforming uses. So that concludes this presentation. Thank you. And if you have any more questions, we look forward to hearing them. Thank you.
I have just a quick question. Do you know if any of these apply to, because there's going to be places that are going to be selling now, like supplies, you know what I mean, growing supplies and things like that. Does this zoning apply to people who sell supplies to, let's say, individuals want to grow at home? I don't know what you need to grow this, but kind of like greenhouse kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Does the zoning apply to this, or?
Well, there's already head shops and stuff, you know, pipe and tobacco's everywhere, so.
Yeah.
And they're not restricted to any zoning, right?
Well, you're supposed to put tobacco in them.
Yeah.
On the pipe.
Oh. Yeah, it's crazy. You go in there and there's all these pipes everywhere, wall to wall and all that kind of stuff. And you're going, yeah, okay, whatever. Hey.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Have we estimated how many permits we will issue for cannabis retail?
We have not at this point. We're doing our best to get out in front of it. What we're asking everyone to do at this point is, if they have questions about where they can possibly build a cannabis facility, the thing you have to remember is everybody focuses on the retail facilities. It seems like everyone is focused on you know, where you're going to be able to buy it, where you're going to be able to smoke it, where you're going to be able to buy your gummies and all that other good stuff. So what we have to remember is, though, by legalization covered 6 or 7 different categories of cannabis. Everything from cultivation, the actual growing and to the processing, which is the trimming of the plant, manufacturing, taking that finished product and turning it into something else, either your edibles or your baked goods or your pills or other things. It also covers the distribution, logistics and distribution of cannabis and how that's handled. The dispensaries, whether they're retail or just a regular recreational cannabis facility or a medical cannabis facility. But then you also have on-site consumption possibilities, and you have special events as well. So we're having to write an ordinance that covers all 6 or 7 of those potential categories and those potential permits. Based on my experience, what we have seen in the past is that the initial push is always for the cultivators, people that want to come in and grow the product in a commercial level and produce enough of it to supply the processors, the manufacturers, and ultimately the distribution chain and profit in the sales. As of today, we only have a grand total of one manufacturer that's been permitted in the city. It's a very, very small facility, but it is tied to Pecos Valley Productions out in the county, that facility out there. It's my understanding they provide finished product to a couple of the other dispensaries here in town. We are talking to a couple of other people, but at this point in time, we're letting everybody know that because our ordinance is pending, that we will take their applications. We will certainly start processing things as soon as we have everything in place. But what you have in front of you tonight, this portion of the ordinance, is only about 25% of what we've written to date. We didn't want to bring forward a 60, 70-page ordinance and try to review it all at once. So
We
broke it up
appreciate that.
but we're trying to break it up. And so this ordinance will be coming back in front of the legal committee and back in front of city council every month for at least the next 4 months while we flesh out the entire ordinance. Simultaneously, though, staff is we have to work on, as we said, we have to work on all the applications. We have to work on all the processes and procedures to move things through. And that's why we wanted to bring you all up to speed, because procedures, processes, applications are going to be changing. Okay? The city council and the legal committee was very, very specific that they do want to have a hand in the permitting and approval of these. So every single cannabis project coming through will require a zone change to either the CCAN or the ICAN zone. They will also require a conditional use permit. Many of them, I will suspect, will probably also be coming forward with preliminary plats and final plats to carve out the pieces of property that they're going to work on. But all of those details are being worked out right now. As a matter of fact, yesterday morning, we had our first meeting on amendment number 1 to the cannabis ordinance that isn't even fully passed yet. So it's a process, and we're going through it as quickly as we possibly can.
What kind of fees are you anticipating?
That's part of the process. We are going through not just the fee schedule for cannabis, we're actually going through the entire fee schedule for everything that comes through the planning and zoning department. That was one of the tasks I handed off to our intern, Austin, and he did a lot of research looking around at what other cities are charging, not just here in New Mexico, but also in West Texas, looking at some of the other things, but looking at our geographic area and looking to see what other people are charging, but also taking a good hard look at how much time and effort staff is having to put into this. That's something I'm going to be going over. The last item this evening is I'm going to bring back to you a complete summary of what your staff has been doing and how busy we are. And coming from being new to the city and having worked with a number of cities all across California, I can tell you've got a seriously hard-working staff, and they are very, very busy, and they're only going to get busier if we don't streamline the process.
Who's going to police this, check on the validity of the grower, or the check on the retailer? Is the state doing the medical now, or are we involved?
One of the reasons for writing our own ordinance is so this will fall under code enforcement. Much of what we're doing right now will be by codifying our procedures and our policies all the way up through and including taxation on how we're going to handle our local taxes as well. Then it becomes a code enforcement issue for us. So we can handle the enforcement of our local retailers.
So if the city gets 20% or whatever the percentage of the tax, does that go like our gross receipts up to Santa Fe and then they send it back, or will it be like the lodger's tax?
No, as far as I know, there's two things you're talking about here. We have a right under the current legislation to pass our own tax and do a direct collection of taxes here in the city. That requires, from what I understand, a certain legislative act, send it out to vote and other things. Parker is much more knowledgeable on those issues than I am. But you will also see that the very last section, the very last page of this, before you get to the signature page, there's an entire section set aside for local taxation, Article 13. Okay. That will be filled in at some point in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Story, Commissioners. So I have a report talking about thinking about the changes of process and procedures for accepting and processing and the timeline for zoning cases. So on your desk, you have a small update here. This is a draft, still in progress, but you can take a look at that. So we're backing up basically the timeline to accept what I'm calling now a pre-application for a zoning case. So not necessarily every pre-application will go forward as a zoning case. So we're proposing a 6-week timeline to streamline the staff workload and have enough time to prepare cases. This pre-application process will enable staff to have the time to decide on the completeness of cases or the completeness of information in the application. We'll provide a hard deadline to accept complete information. We'll build into this a time in the schedule for site visits and staff review of the site and staff review of all the application materials. And then we'll only accept applications and fees for cases that are ready to come to Planning and Zoning Commission by the deadline.
So the pre-application is not the actual application.
The pre-application will not be the actual application. We will.
Pre-app, and you will give them any comments, tell them you're good to go, submit your application.
Right. We built in the time for staff to review and do a site review, and go visit the site, and then provide information to the applicant saying this is the list of items that we need.
Does that give you enough time? I mean, when do you have to advertise? Isn't it 3 or 4 weeks before that?
We have to advertise 15 days before the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this gives us about a 7-week schedule from the time of the pre-application, the deadline for pre-application, to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Okay. Seems like it's kind of quick, but if you guys are comfortable with it.
We've been doing it really quick.
I'm assuming that.
Other than that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Chairman Story, we've been doing it too quickly. We've been bowing to some of the pressure from some of the builders and developers. They've come through, they give us a half-completed application. They expect us or demand that we set it for public hearing. That's why we came to you a month or two ago and said that we needed to develop a policy that no project, and when I speak of a project includes all the components. So you may have one project that requires a preliminary plat, a zone change, conditional use permit, or a special use permit. All of those items need to come as a single unit, as a project before you. We don't want to piecemeal anything anymore because they're all interrelated. Everything works together. So by putting together this pre-application review process, think of it this way. It is a round table discussion, okay? Commissioner McCormick, you come forward and you've got an idea to build a new business, whatever that business is. You would sketch that out in a preliminary fashion based upon the checklist that we would provide you for pre-application review. There'd be a small fee for the pre-application review, but what you would get for that is we would then sit down with staff and you would have planning and zoning, engineering, fire department, solid waste, whoever we think is necessary in order to make decisions on how to move that project forward, all sitting around the table simultaneously, along with you, your architect, your engineer, and the people on your design team. We have this roundtable discussion, and what comes out of that is a punch list. Hey, we need these items. You need to submit these items and amend your plans so that you have a completed application. And you walk out of that with this application. Then, when you come back to make your formal application, For your preliminary plat, your zone change, everything else, you hand that checklist, that punch list to us, along with all the items, and Meredith or Spencer or Austin or even me, I can follow the punch list and take it in, okay? And we can say, do you have your preliminary plat? Yes. Have you followed everything? Yes. Check that off, check that off. Okay, you have a completed submittal now. Now we can begin processing this application, okay? But by doing that, what we're trying to do is hold both the development community and our staff to a timeline, okay, and a set of standards. If the developer provides us with a complete package right at the beginning, and we don't have to go back and forth and negotiate and do a lot of things, we can process things much faster because we have the answers to their questions at our fingertips. Okay? So we'll be able to review quicker, ultimately, and then we back up. Like I said, 15 days minimum advertising period, but we need to have absolutely everything in our hands a week before that so we can write the staff report. We can finish the staff report. If there's anything missing, maybe there is a small minor thing missing, we could probably let them submit that during that interim 2-week period. But we still have to have everything together no later than 7 days before the Planning Commission meeting, because we want to make sure you all have adequate time to review the cases. Right now, we're pushing cases forward, and you're lucky if you get 5 days right now. Sometimes you don't even get that long. Okay. So we're trying to create a process here that will be standardized, codified, and will also lead to a better end product and give you all the ability to make better and more knowledgeable decisions.
I have a question about that. In the pre-application process, is there a list based on whatever the business is? Will there be a list of what is expected and the fees and so on, or is it based on whatever the group decides that's going to be required?
Remember this document we handed you just a minute ago? Section 27-66, pre-application review requirements. We are working on those.
Okay.
The answer to your question is yes, there will be a submittal checklist. Yes, there will be a fee checklist, and we'll put together everything so when people, and it will be available on the website. People will be able to download it. If we have it our way, people will also be able to submit everything on the website. This is a big process we're going through right now to try to streamline everything and make it much easier for the developers coming in from the outside.
This timeline and this process with the pre-application, rather than just accepting a final application, so the pre-application process is new. And this will give staff an adequate time and resources to prepare cases and meet all the legal requirements, such as notification, advertising it in the newspaper, getting the minutes done, those kinds of things. So that will be helpful. And in order to accomplish this, Planning and Zoning Division needs an additional dedicated full-time planner to do all these things: work with applicants, intake pre-applications, coordinate the staff review, process the zoning cases, manage the files, prepare meeting packets, prepare presentations, prepare the minutes, prepare the legal ads, prepare notification letters, the Planning and Zoning, and the decision letters at Planning and Zoning, whatever you approve or deny a case. So it's a lot. It's really a full-time job. Right now, staff is, we have to put other things aside, permitting and so forth, to handle Planning and Zoning Commission. And our intern, Austin, has really been instrumental these last 2 months in helping put these packets together, put the presentations together, do the maps, the notification maps, Exhibit D, Exhibit C, the letters, stuffing envelopes, which takes a lot of staff time and has just been golden in terms of helping with all that. So thank you so much, Austin. So this slide shows my dream team for planning and zoning. So right now it's just a planning and zoning administrator, me, and an associate planner and an intern. But really, as Roswell grows and develops, we're going to need a full complement in our planning division. So a zoning planner, an associate planner, which Spencer is our associate planner right now, a housing planner, so for housing in neighborhoods, a permit tech or 2 or 3, depending on how busy we get, and zoning enforcement. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, we do want to be respectful of your time. I do believe we have emailed you all copies, PDF copies of tonight's presentation, so you can go through them at your leisure. So for the housing and development update this month, I'm really just going to hit the high points. If you have any questions or you want to dig into the numbers, please, you all know how to get a hold of me. I'm not that hard to find these days, day or night here lately, so it pretty much doesn't matter. But just to give you an idea, we went back through and we went back to the first of the year and we started coming in, and what you all see is the big projects. You see the big things that are going through, the things that require significant time and effort. What you don't see is the dozens and dozens and dozens of little things that happen every single day. And we're going to go through all 5 divisions in community development just real quickly to show you how busy your team really is. Keeping in mind that our summer staff on planning and zoning is 2 full-timers and an intern who is leaving us in 7 days. So we're going to and what we have though is a growing demand in the city for our services. So we're concerned about that. But again, something as simple as, the reason I put this slide up here, this is an indication of people reinvesting in their homes, reinvesting in themselves. Every person that comes in for a fence or an alley cut or to get an address reassignment or something like that, all of these things that go on, including building permits as well as summary plats and things like that. All of these little things happen every single day, dozens of times a day. The front door at the Planning and Zoning Department is like a revolving door. I don't think Meredith is allowed to sit down on any given day. She's up, she's at the door, she's greeting people, she's moving things through, and it's just a constant parade. And half the people that come through, my office is actually closest to the door, so I see everyone coming through all the time. And I would imagine a good 75% of the time, maybe 80%. The first words out of their mouth, first words out of my mouth after, hello, how can we help you, are, go see Meredith. And usually by that time, she's up and out of her desk and standing in the hallway and ready to take somebody in. Now, that's the level of customer service we're starting to do. On the planning and zoning end, this is not the building and safety end or the building and inspections end, but this is just what planning and zoning has to do. But again, notice the number of people that are reinvesting in themselves. Okay, building either brand new homes, manufactured homes, adding porches, patios, and awnings. This is good for the city. This is very, very good for the city, because every person that reinvests in themselves, that reinvests in their own property, ties themselves just a little bit tighter to the city. These are people that are not going to move. They're here. They're concerned about their community, they're concerned about their neighborhood, and they're willing to reinvest. So we do everything we can to turn these permits around. If we can't do it the same day, we do it within just a couple of days, and get these people out there, because I don't know if any of you have experienced it, but when I moved here, we bought a nice home, okay, but it's an older home. And of course, my wife, within about 48 hours of us moving in, closing escrow and moving in, she had a list of things she wants to accomplish, and she wants to accomplish them now. Not a week from now, not a month from now. She wants to accomplish them now. So, yes, Meredith.
Thank you, Kevin. Commissioners, this is only what we permit, not the people who walk in to talk about projects, not the contractors who come in to talk about projects for their customers. These are just the ones that are permitted. So double, triple that number, and that's what we're dealing with on a daily basis.
And because these are homeowners, they're not professionals, they're not engineers, they're not architects, many times we have to sit down and walk them through the process, right from, you know, can we see your site plan? Do you have anything that shows us how you're going to lay things out? Do you understand what a setback is? It really is not just a permitting process, it's a full-on education process that we have to walk people through. So these kind of permits, I would imagine if somebody walks through the door ready to go with an actual application and everything else, we can probably issue those in about an hour, but I would bet the average permit takes 3 to 4 hours by the time we walk someone through, and usually a couple of visits to get it right. Okay. Just a couple of things that have happened in the last month. 320 South Main, again, these are commercial developments. 210 East McGaffey for a flooring showroom. 2019 South Main Street. And again, these are the ones we can tell you about. These are the ones you haven't seen, but you will hear about. You will see them going vertical. And I want to let you know that there are a lot of other things. There's a tremendous amount of activity in the development. My phone is truly ringing off the hook all day long, every single day, with calls from major corporations looking to build new facilities, build new businesses, retail businesses, industrial businesses, even all the way down to and including a number of small fast food restaurants and everything in between. It's a very exciting time to be here in Roswell. I like it when my phone rings. It really doesn't bother me that much because I know it's going to be good news most of the time. Okay. Again, cases reviewed by hearing and permit. I just wanted to throw these up there because out of the hundreds of cases we review all day long, every single day for the past 6 months, only 16 have ended up in front of you all in the first 6 months. Okay? A very small percentage of the total cases we review. But we want you to keep that in mind when people ask you out there on the street, what's going on in Roswell? Hey, what's going on? Well, you know about 16 things, maybe 18 things, all right? But what's going on is hundreds of good things, hundreds and hundreds of good things, all day long, every single day. Just to give you an idea, and this statistic blew me away. Okay? Meredith alone has a log ending last month of 1,232 contacts. That's phone calls or people actually visiting her in the office. Okay? Todd, our real estate property guy, 225. Austin, we keep him busy. We keep him in the closet upstairs, away from the public. Actually, the truth is the public doesn't call him because he doesn't have a phone other than his cell phone. But it helps to keep him busy. He can stay focused, so he doesn't have anything going on. Spencer, you only see 5 up there because this was ending in July, and he didn't come to work until June 21st. So he started taking calls his first week here. Okay. Our other staff, people that have been with us, either temporary part-time or a staff that is no longer with us, nearly 350 calls. And myself, that's my best guess, is those are the ones I remember to log. Okay, 495 different calls. And I've only been here since the end of February. Okay. Business license. This is a barometer of the activity. And just to remind you, we only have one business license clerk, Nakomi Bejarano. Okay, this is businesses license issued. This is new licenses. This is people coming back in. This is in the post-pandemic world. They may have gone out of business, or this is businesses that are starting up just since January. But 823 new licenses, brand new business licenses here in the city. 640 renewals for her. All coming off of one desk, one person, one at a time, every single day. Total business permits issued just in June, 183 building permits. I should say, yeah, building permits. And sorry about that, typo. That is building permits. All right, issued 183 just in June alone. 1,031 year-to-date. Okay? If you take 183 and multiply it times 6, you should have pretty close to 1,200. But what that is, of course, is a sign of increasing development all across the city. Ever since, as the pandemic eases, we're looking at it. We had a little bit of a slowdown in June compared to May because of the weather and because of the cost of materials. Fortunately, I think we're seeing the cost of materials now start to ease just a little bit as the pipeline gets full, and, well, the weather is up to Mother Nature. But we're hoping. We're hoping. Okay. This is one I wanted to bring forward. I had someone come into my office yesterday, well-known here in the city, and he proceeded to tell me that he didn't believe that code enforcement was getting the job done. And he was very pointed about his comments, saying that your team is not getting out there and taking care of business. Your team, your code enforcement people. And I said, I cannot let that go unanswered. So I dug in. Your code enforcement team consists of your code enforcement supervisor and 5 officers. I'm sorry? Oh, you have to take a small break. Okay. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Well, this is the final slide. Okay. That's okay. All right. Well, we'll continue. But this is what I wanted to know. You've got a grand total of, and we have had some changeover in code enforcement. We have had pretty consistently either only 4 or 5 people in our code enforcement. I want you to look at that last number there. 9,349 cases processed just in the first 6 months. 1,500 cases a month. 300 cases per month per code enforcement officer. These are either responses to the fix-it forms that come in, or people that come that have been observed out in the field. But they come in all day long, every single day. Things that we need to respond to. Okay? The notices, look at over 3,000 notices and violations. Now, fortunately, voluntary compliance, that's actually a really good number. That's a sign of people that our ability to influence people to get back into compliance is pretty good. You've got almost 2/3 of all the cases filed that get resolved without ever having to go any further, other than being put on notice that you are not in compliance with our current zoning and development requirements, zoning and development code. Okay. We have had to file 62 cases this year, but 13 of those have been dismissed because people got into compliance before it ever went forward. Okay. Weeds, next month that number is going to jump up exponentially. we are probably looking, we have probably had in the month of July, and we're not even done with it, I know we've had over 100 complaints. I mean, weeds, Mother Nature has been kind to us with rain, and we all know what happens to the weeds when Mother Nature is kind. Okay. Litter and trash, that's been another issue that we're dealing with as quickly as we can. The unsanitary premises, many of those cases do end up in front of the city council, and those are the condemnations and other things that we have to do, those buildings that are just unfit for habitation in many cases. Okay. I like the last one, the very bottom one. I didn't realize we tracked this, but people that are cited for not having a permit for a garage sale, we've issued 4 citations this year. So, remind your friends and neighbors, get your permit for your garage sale, okay, before you have one. But I did want to bring that forward because I want all of you to understand, number one, I'm very proud of my team. I'm very proud of what we're doing at Code Enforcement. I am very proud to work for the city of Roswell. And I think you, as our planning commissioner, should be very proud of the team you have, very proud of the work that we're doing, and very proud of the way we're setting ourselves up for a very prosperous future here in the city. Unless there's any questions, I believe that does it for this evening. What's that? We are working on that. Believe me, I am bringing every bit of my influence skills to bear on that particular issue. We could bring Mr. Matthews. Was he still in the audience? No, he stepped out. But we are talking about that. We are looking at all those things. Of course, as revenues increase citywide, we'll be able to hopefully do some additional hiring.
Thank you guys for all your work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Age issues. I only have one question on this slide. How do you spell communications? How do you spell communications? I'm not sure that's how I would spell it.
Yeah, well,
The last slide, he was tired.
Spencer didn't get around to spell checking for me.
Way to go, Spencer.
You do a bunch of
No,
things right.
I
they
take the
only
blame
point
for
out-
that one. We were putting this together as late as about, I was bound and determined to get through this, and yeah, that's a 4:30 on the day of the planning commission.
Okay. Well,
Rush
thank
to-
you all
rush
very
to
much.
finish error.
Yeah, we appreciate the information and what you're doing. So I'm assuming there's no other business. We can move on to public comments. We only have one public. Larry, would you like to say something? Please state your name and address and social security number and Visa card number, please.
Should be on record by now.
Larry Conley, 2815 in Canto. On the cannabis, the one thing I haven't heard, can somebody from, let's say, the state of Missouri apply for a cannabis permit in Roswell?
The answer to that question is the owner of the property or the owner of the business absolutely can reside. However, they still have to follow all the guidelines, and the business itself must be located here in Roswell. Or, well, certainly in the state of New Mexico.
So a corporation in Missouri or Illinois can apply for a permit and, have a resident manager that's allowed.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that's all I ask. Thank you very much.
And that's actually quite a legitimate question, because as the industry matures, what we're going to see is that you're going to see significant investment from the pharmaceutical industry into the medical, especially into the research and development end, as well as into the medical end. But you're going to see a great deal of investment coming from the tobacco industry as well on the recreational end. That's where the money is. They have the money to invest. They have the money to do the R&D. And you're going to see a lot of consolidation when a lot of big money coming into those kind of things, which is why there is the possibility we could end up with something like that. But we'll wait and see. That's why, why we have to get out in front of it.
Any other public comments? Any further reports or announcements? I only got one thing to say, is that the cultivation, probably going to see a lot of people trying to come into the city. I was reading something the other day about the water rights issue, and they can't just do the old residential well and irrigate their cannabis. They got to have water rights. It's going to be an issue with that, whereas they can come in and hook up to city water and get going.
One of the things you'll see coming forward as we continue to work on the development requirements here is that every developer, especially cultivators, because the biggest use of both water and power is in the cultivation, on the cultivation end. And they will have to provide will-serve permits. They will have to provide evidence that they have a source of water and that they also have the power necessary, because all facilities will have to be indoors. So in order to grow the best, anybody who's been involved in any kind of indoor agriculture, industrial agriculture, knows that water and light are the two things that you can control, and they are the things that make the difference between a good grow and a bad grow. Cannabis has, certain strains of cannabis have very, very strict requirements, to the point of they grow the best with 24 hours of light. The only place you're going to get that's with an indoor grow. So power becomes a big issue. Water is obviously a big issue. Effluent is the other one. The water that's remaining, the runoff, because they tend to have tremendously high levels of nitrates from the different types of chemicals and other things that they use to grow the to grow the cannabis. And then last but not least, we have to deal with green waste as well, because the green waste will still contain high levels of THC, so the green waste has got to be disposed of properly as well. All of these issues have to be addressed before we issue a permit, not after.
Well, commercial production is only going to be indoors?
Yes.
No outdoors is allowed?
No outdoors.
Even at your house.
There's some very, very good
At the
reasons
house?
for that.
Yeah, isn't that right? Even at your house, you grow it in your backyard, it's got to be an indoor.
Yep.
Can't put it in your garden.
Hey, well, there we
Again,
go.
this is where we're dealing with security issues. Okay? You can grow at home as long as you're 21 or older.
But
Okay?
it's got to be indoors.
You have to protect it from the children, but there's also some environmental concerns as well. The pollen from the cannabis plant is extremely, for people that have high sensitivities, allergies and things like that, it's extremely, people are extremely sensitive to it. The other thing is, and this is anything any of your commercial growers will know, that the various strains, the quickest way to lose a crop is to have it cross-pollinated between 2 or more different strains. You lose the entire crop immediately. It becomes just a junk crop that, well, I would imagine Big Tobacco will buy and roll and sell in a 20-pack at some point in the future. But the biggest way to live, if you're going to be doing medical or pharmaceutical grade, that is another grade that's coming up, you have to be very, very strict with the way you grow, because you're after the extracts. You're after that THC, and you're after specific levels. You're after specific strains, and a cross-pollination issue will ruin an entire crop immediately. You've got
What you do is you plant them in between your tomato plants because they look a lot alike. Except for the final flower, I guess. Little different color than a tomato. Anything else? Commissioners, got anything? Anything, anybody? Okay, it's 7:22 and we are adjourned. You might let the mayor know somebody stole his gavel.
Thank you, guys. Very interested.